Grand Rising and welcome to another segment of CLG Viewpoint. I am Cindy Lorraine Grais, and it's an absolute honor and pleasure to have you here with me again for segment number 77. Today it is in the Kingdom of Canada. It is Divina Anima Day 9, year 0035, which is Wednesday, June the 4th, 2025. Well, each segment, I like to start with a sage clearing. And so, some of you that aren't familiar with this, it's a process where I clear out all the negative energy and leaving each segment with positive energy. I use this sage stick. You can also use a selenite wand. But today we'll be using a sage stick. To all low energy entities, you are sent back to your perfect place. And so only divine light and divine love is welcomed here. And so it is. Today, under Health Sense, we'll be covering why you should take Aloe Vera. International news: Russia to increase gas supplies to European country. Under local news, update on the BC Ostrich farm. BC reviewing home sharing program for adults with developmental disabilities. Why Humber River Hospital is suing a private partner. Evie says Japanese highly interested in BC minerals. And Canadian Tire sells Helly Hansen to U.S. company for $1.3 billion. Now, on to our video, why you should take Aloe Vera.
Most homes have aloe vera. If they don't, they should. Aloe vera also contains a growth stimulant. So aloe vera can also be taken internally to coat and soothe and heal the gastrointestinal tract. Do you know that Crohn's, irritable bowel, ulcers, do you know they're the easiest things to heal? Because the cells that line the gastrointestinal tract, they're remade every 3 to 5 days. What you've got to do is stop irritating it, and the most common irritants are refined sugar, your dairy products and gluten products. Put the person on slippery elm or aloe vera 3 times a day, and it's amazing how quickly they heal. But aloe vera can also be used externally. It can be used for all skin problems. Very simple way to take it is to just cut a leaf, peel it heavily, because that thick yellow slime just under the skin can be an irritant to the colon and cause someone to have diarrhea. And it's just like eating nothing, and just chew it up or put it in your juicer. There's some quick ways to do it, because the aloe vera can heal internally and it can heal externally.
Very powerful healing herb, aloe vera. I use it quite often myself. Now, on to international news. Russia to increase gas supplies to European country. Serbia is reported seeking a long-term contract with energy giant Gazprom. RT News, June the 3rd, 2025. Moscow and Belgrade are negotiating a long-term deal for increased gas deliveries to Serbia after the current contract expires in September. The Russian embassy in Belgrade has told Izvestia the landlocked Balkan country relies heavily on Russian energy supplies and has refused to support Western sanctions on Moscow over the Ukraine conflict. The existing agreement, which allows Belgrade to buy gas at a favorable price, was recently extended through September, ensuring continued deliveries amid ongoing negotiations for a long-term contract. Negotiations on the continuation of Russian gas supplies to Serbia after this date are underway, the embassy told the news outlet on Monday. Under the terms of the extension, Gazprom will supply Serbia with 6.1 million cubic meters of gas per day at a price of €290 per 1,000 cubic meters. The rate is below the current European average of around 360 euros, according to Dusan Bahatovic, the CEO of Srbijagas, Serbia's state-owned gas importer and distributor. Serbian ambassador to Russia, Momcilo Babic, also confirmed that the new supply contract is being discussed, adding that boosting gas deliveries was agreed upon at a meeting in Moscow between Serbian President Alexander Vučić and Russian President Vladimir Putin on May 9th. Vučić visited the Russian capital last month to attend the Victory Day celebrations. This question was resolved at the meeting of the two presidents. He was quoted as saying. Babic said, however, that no date has been set for signing the deal, that the specific volumes of future supplies have yet to be determined. Serbia currently receives Russian gas via the Turk Stream pipeline, which transits through Turkey and Bulgaria. The country relies on Russian gas for over 80% of its consumption. Energy experts cited by Izvestia have warned that raising gas volumes may not be technically possible without reopening major transit routes such as Nord Stream, the Aloe Europe pipeline, or restoring flows through Ukraine. Now on to local news. Update. BC Ostrich Farm calls for independent testing to prevent unnecessary destruction. The Canadian Press, June 3rd, 2025. The operators of a British Columbia ostrich flock that's facing a cull order after an avian flu outbreak are calling for independent testing of the birds to prevent their unnecessary destruction. Katie Pasitny, whose parents own Universal Ostrich Farms in Edgewood, BC, issued a statement on Monday saying that nearly 400 ostriches are healthy and have shown no signs of illness for more than 4 months. Great news. The statement says the flock poses no threat and should be tested for ongoing avian flu infections, saying the ostriches have acquired herd immunity to the virus and are a valuable scientific resource. The statement's in response to a lengthy update from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency on Friday that said it had fined the farm $20,000 for failing to cooperate with anti-avian flu measures. The agency said it issued 2 violation notices to the farm for failing to report illnesses and deaths among the flock last year and failing to follow quarantine orders. It says the type of avian flu infection at the premise is a mutation not seen elsewhere in Canada and includes a genotype that has been associated with a human infection in one poultry worker in Ohio. The CFIA statement represents a rebuff. Yes, a rebuff for proposals of U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who wrote to the CFIA's president last week and called for the birds to be saved for joint research. And on to the video.
The Minister of Agriculture and I think British Columbians are a little bit frustrated by the actions of this federal agency. We understand the importance of containing the bird flu and the important role that agency plays. What's hard to watch is lack of discretion and ability to evaluate case-by-case scenarios. Let's take that away from the specific instant case and just talk about that generally. It's been a consistent experience that farmers have had with federal agencies. Devastating for this family, for this farm, for these folks who are trying to build a life for themselves. And I hope the federal government looks very carefully at appropriate compensation to ensure they're made whole, and not that can fill in for the massive loss that they've seen.
My personal thoughts. This is absolutely ludicrous that the Canadian Food Inspection Agency wants to kill these healthy ostriches. Undoubtedly, the testing will prove 100% that these beautiful ostriches are healthy and should not be killed. BC reviewing home sharing program for adults with developmental disabilities. The Canadian Press, June 2nd, 2025. The British Columbian government is commissioning an independent review of the province's home share program months after an inquest into the starvation death of a woman with Down syndrome in a Port Coquitlam share home. A statement from the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction says the review will assess safety in home sharing arrangement standards that promote quality of life as well as accountability and oversight measures. The government says it will convene an advisory body made up of individuals, families, and service providers to give input for developing recommendations. Florence Gerard was 54 years old when she died. Now, she died in 2018, 7 years ago, weighing only about 50 pounds in the home where she lived as part of the Home Share Program for people with developmental disabilities, managed by the Crown Corporation Community Living, BC. A coroner's inquest jury in January made 13 recommendations, including calling for better training and pay for people who share their homes and an improved system to coordinate residents' needs. Shane Simpson, chair of Community Living BC's board, says in the statement that the Crown Corporation welcomes the review and that the organization has made a number of changes to its processes and oversight since Gerard's death. The government says the review is expected to finish in the fall. I have a video courtesy of CTV News.
At the time of her starvation death in 2018. A court later convicted provincially funded caregiver Astrid Dahl of failing to provide the necessaries of life. Gerard's death sparked a series of changes at Community Living BC, the Crown Corporation overseeing the home sharing program.
I'm still hearing concerns from families. The review that I've established is looking at how home sharing is operating right now in 2025. Whether the changes CLBC made since 2018 are having the impact that we hoped.
The government has hired Tamar Consultancy to conduct what it calls an independent review of CLBC's home sharing program.
Tamar Consulting was selected through a competitive bid process. They were chosen based on their international, national, and local experience. They have worked with CLBC before.
Tamar Consultancy has a limited online footprint, but the minister confirms one of the firm's principals is Tim Stainton, a professor emeritus in UBC's School of Social Work.
His credentials are beyond reproach, quite frankly. I believe that the professor was around in that group before 2005 that actually helped to create CLBC.
Not only is Stainton one of the architects of CLBC, he has continued to work extensively as a consultant for the province in the 20 years since, and has also conducted research sponsored by CLBC.
What is it going to tell us that we don't already know?
Down Syndrome BC President Tamara Taggart points out Shane Simpson, CLBC's board chair, was the government minister responsible for CLBC at the time of Gerard's death. Rather than what she sees as a taxpayer-funded insider review, she'd like to see the province focus on the 15 jury recommendations from the coroner's inquest into Gerard's death.
Things have not improved. Other people have died. We know this. We need to get through those recommendations. We don't need another report. It's been 6 months since the coroner's inquest.
The province says it expects the results of this latest CLBC review sometime in the fall. Ben Milger, CTV News, Vancouver.
My personal thoughts. This is an absolute atrocious lack of care that was given to Florence Gerard and to others. Florence Gerard's death was in 2018, that's 7 years ago. The 15 recommendations from the coroner's inquest report should have been implemented immediately. Why the stalling? Nothing has been enacted for over 6 months since the report was completed. Why did it take so long for this report? Others have died. A full and thorough investigation forensic investigation under natural law into all deaths that have occurred under the jurisdiction of the Crown Corporation Community Living BC. And so it is. Why Humber River Hospital is suing a private partner. Humber River Hospital in Toronto is suing private partner Plenary Group, alleging poor construction and lack of maintenance. Adrian Gobrio reports. Video courtesy of CTV News.
North America's first fully digital hospital is pointing the finger at a potential human error.
Every Ontarian should be concerned. This is a 10-year-old hospital.
Toronto's Humber River Health has filed a $100 million lawsuit claiming that shoddy construction has left the hospital floors unleveled, putting the health and safety of patients and staff at risk. Construction on Humber River began in 2011 with a public-private deal with Plenary Healthcare Partnerships. The Ontario government signed Plenary on to build and maintain the hospital for the next 3 decades. On their website, Plenary Group is described as a leading independent long-term investor, developer, and operator of public infrastructure with a global presence. Though Humber River Health has filed this lawsuit against Plenary and the consortium contracted to build and operate the hospital, claiming that uneven floors have made it difficult for staff to move equipment, supplies, food, and patients on wheeled transportation devices. Often, wheeled carts have to be placed behind rubber stoppers to prevent the carts from sliding out of position. One infrastructure analyst says this is yet another example of a failed public-private partnership.
The key is that the risks that were supposed to be managed and transferred to the private sector have not resided there. They've ended up boomeranging back, and the public is bearing the costs for it.
Among their list of projects, CTV News has learned that Plenary has also been contracted by the province of Ontario to build, design, and operate aspects of a new subway line currently under construction in Toronto.
To see now that this is going to litigation instead of being resolved through the public-private partnership itself is really at the core of this issue.
Plenary declined a request for comment today, as did the Ministry of Health, saying the matter is now before the courts. Adrian Gobro, CTV News, Toronto.
My personal thoughts. Definitely mismanaged, and a thorough investigation is wanted. So it is, under natural law. EB says, Japanese highly interested in BC Minerals LNG. Their premier is on a 10-day trade mission to Japan, South Korea, and Malaysia. Lady Smith's Germanus Chronicle, Mark Page, 2/3, 2025. Premier David Eby is finding considerable interest in Japan for BC's mining and LNG sectors, but nothing to justify building a new heavy oil pipeline to the West Coast. During the Asia trip, the premier is scheduled to travel to Japan, South Korea, and Malaysia. This 10-day mission aims to forge more trading partnerships with Asian countries to withstand U.S. tariffs. This means finding companies to invest in BC and finding places for British Columbians to sell products. He spoke to reporters on Tuesday afternoon, June 3rd, from Osaka. It was already Wednesday in Japan with a time difference, comparing this trade mission to his last trip to the country in 2023. He is noticing that Japanese have more knowledge about what is happening in BC than in the previous visit, with a particular interest in permitting at both the provincial and federal levels for resource projects. U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs have upended Canada's relationship with its southern neighbor, but according to Eby, stronger ties are being forged elsewhere. I'm seeing a real increased energy and desire of Japanese companies to partner in British Columbia, he said. We're having higher level meetings with companies, with senior executives. Japanese want help with permitting. Eby met on Tuesday with several more mining-related firms, including Nippon Steel, which invests on Sparwood's Elk Valley Resources, and Sumitomo Metal Mining, which has investments in the Baptiste Nickel project near Fort St. James. He said companies are particularly interested in figuring out how to navigate the permitting processes more quickly. They seem to have run into challenges at the federal level and want us to be an advocate, Eby said. The premier also met with Mitsubishi Corporation, which has a stake in LNG Canada. The Japanese are decarbonizing their energy infrastructure and look at liquefied natural gas as a bridge fuel. They do see the LNG Canada project as a significant part of their overall strategy, he said. Another factor in BC's favor in terms of LNG is the increasing cost for Japanese companies shipping natural gas through the Panama Canal, combined with low water levels causing delays. They're enthusiastic about the ability to just leave BC ports and go straight across to Japan, EB said. But EB continued to pour cold water, another premier stock of building another oil pipeline across BC to the coast, saying there is already taxpayer-owned Trans Mountain Pipeline, which is not being used to full capacity. He added that the Japanese don't want heavy oil and thermal coal, and he has not altered his stance against lifting the heavy oil tanker ban on BC's north coast. Personal thoughts. Under natural law, there is a law that specifies the building of 3 major ports in the north to open up the trading routes in Canada: Yukon, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. Check out the kingdomofcanada.ca. Yes, that is the kingdomofcanada.ca. Canadian Tire sells Helly Hansen to U.S. company for $1.3 billion. Global News, written by Uday Rana, June 2nd, 2025. Canadian Tire has sold its sportswear brand Helly Hansen to an American company, the Canadian retailer announced on Monday. In a statement released Monday, Canadian Tire said it had successfully closed the previously announced sale of the Helly Hansen business to Contour Brands, Inc. The retailer, founded in 1922, announced earlier in the year that it was selling sportswear business Helly Hansen to Contour Brands. The almost $1.3 billion deal with the U.S. owner of clothing labels Wrangler, Lee, and Rock & Republic boosted Canadian Tire's balance sheet, the kind of cash it would need for a Bay deal. Canadian Tire CEO Greg Hicks said back in February that customers will still be able to buy Helly Hansen products off their shelves. As we shift from brand owner to brand customer, we expect Helly Hansen's world-class products to remain on our shelves and on the shopping list of our customers. We're excited to see where Contour takes the brand next, says Hicks. The company said it was selling the brand to focus on its Canadian retail business. As our strategy becomes more singular, focused on great Canadian retail, it is time to pass this iconic brand into global hands, Hicks said. He said the money made from this sale would go towards a combination of debt reduction, share repurchases, as well investments to drive customer experience and growth in its core Canadian retail business. Now on to the video.
And it's a steal of a deal. Canadian Tire has agreed to buy the rights to Hudson's Bay's trademark brand as part of a $30 million deal. We're joined by retail analyst Bruce Winder now with more on this. Thanks for being here, Bruce.
Thanks for having me on.
So what exactly is Canadian Tire paying for? What are they getting part of this sweet deal?
Yeah, my understanding is that for $30 million, they're getting the intellectual property and trademarks of Hudson's Bay, which would include things like the 4 Stripes, the coat of arms, also Gluckstein Home, which is another brand, and even the Zeller's name. So they're getting, and a few other brands too. So they're getting quite a few brands for the $30 million.
Yeah, I was wondering what happened to the Zeller's brand. It's interesting because with Canadian Tire looking to make this move, we're still waiting to hear the approval, correct?
Yeah, of course, it's subject to court approval, but I don't anticipate any blockage there because, you know, the company is anxious to get some money to pay down the $1.1 billion to those creditors.
The $30 million seems like just a drop in the bucket when you talk about a $1.1 billion debt.
Yeah, it's not much. I mean, you know, they're going to come out. Creditors are going to come out with, you know, a very low return on their debt they're owed. But you know, I guess they're just trying to get whatever's possible. But yeah, it's a good move for Canadian Tire. It allows them to control other brands, and they've done a great job of that in the past with things like Motomaster and Mastercraft and other brands.
And it'll be nice to keep it Canadian. Canadian Tire is still Canadian held, correct?
It is, yeah. It's owned by the Billis family mostly, yeah, it'll be nice. Canadian Tire's a well-run company. They've got lots of money, so they can invest in the brands. Where we all knew that, you know, the Bay was didn't get a lot of TLC, a lot of investment from its owners, and became just a fraction of what it used to be. So anxious to see how it looks, you know, down the road, and probably start with an assortment online and in select stores of the four-stripe merchandise, the coat of arms merchandise. And then the wild card in this is Zellers, right? To see what they'll do, if anything, with Zellers.
Yeah, Zellers just keeps getting pulled around, doesn't it? Interestingly, though, the Bay brought the Zellers brand into its stores. Kind of happening now, the same thing with the Bay going into Canadian Tire. Presumably, you would think they might have like that little Bay section of things. Do you think it'll devalue the brand at all?
No, I don't think so. I think it's going to change the brand, but I think that, you know, it gives it a new life in a much smaller format. The reality is the Bay, you know, wasn't doing very well, and you know, this is the best you kind of get from it. You know, this is probably the most valuable asset, except for the leases and, you know, the warehouses, things like that. So I think it gets a new life. It's reborn with a new owner, a new steward, and it'll be fun to see how far Canadian Tire takes it.
Do you see this happening with other Canadian companies, sort of this collapsing or being bought up, I should say, by other Canadian companies and brought into their stores for other brands that might be having a hard time of it right now?
Yeah, it happens now and then. I mean, recently we just, they announced late last week about MEC, Mountain Equipment Co-op, being bought by a Canadian company. So, you know, now and then it happens, right? As retail changes and there's ebb and flow, some brands are winners and some are losers, and the ones that are losers sometimes get picked up. But it's nice to see a Canadian company picking up another Canadian icon so it stays in Canada.
Yeah, no kidding. How do you think businesses are going to fare, Canadian business in particular, obviously, in this current economic climate and tariffs, etc.?
It's pretty tough. It's going to be really tough on a lot of businesses, especially the smaller businesses, because they buy a lot of products from distributors in the US, and a lot of distributors in the US buy products from China. And, you know, right now, China product is 30% more expensive than it was before. So it's going to be really tough for all companies, and the consumers really watching their money too. They're starting to turtle a bit on spending and really, you know, sort of manage their spending. So it's going to be a rough run until the tariff issue is done with for all Canadian companies.
Okay, well, thank you so much for spending your time with us this morning on a long weekend Sunday. We do appreciate it. That is Bruce Winder.
My personal thoughts. Moving to a Canadian retail business focus. Great news. All Canadian. In the Kingdom of Canada, under natural law, there is a law that focuses our kingdom's businesses to be all Canadian. Check out more information on the natural law at thekingdomofcanada.ca. Yes, thekingdomofcanada.ca. Well, I am Cindy Lorraine Grais of CLG View Point, and it was a pleasure today to be with you and sharing the news with you today. I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. If you feel compelled to, please share this forum. I have a video that I produced, Nymph Falls on Vancouver Island, with a little bit of music and a quote from Lao Tzu and Tao Te Ching. Enjoy. Have a wonderful day. Take that time to relax, be with family, or just with yourself. Take your shoes off, enjoy the sunshine, and walk on the grass and hug a tree. Whatever you choose, just enjoy your day. And see you on Divina Anima Day 10, year 0035, Thursday, June 5th, 2025. See you next time.